Hello, my name is Claire Evans. A few years ago, my boyfriend and I moved to Los Angeles from Portland, Oregon. I went to college here, so I'd lived here before, and we'd visited many times over the years, so we kind of considered ourselves to be honorary Angelinos to a certain extent. But when we got here, we found ourselves doing what new transplants to a city always do, trying to find our place, which in Los Angeles, as you know, is not always the easiest thing to do. I mean, LA is amazing, yes, but it's also huge and full of endlessly diverse communities, cultures, subcultures, and neighborhoods. Trying to find yourself here, to find your people, and to find your favorite spots in this endless sprawl, it's a long process of trial and error, of dedicated search, word of mouth, and sometimes more successfully, just random discovery. We did our due diligence as new citizens of Los Angeles. We read all the event listings on the newspapers, we signed up for mailing lists, we even read guidebooks, but those were all too broad. They didn't really speak to us. They were trying to speak to as wide a readership as possible. They weren't for us. Eventually, we discovered, as you probably have, that multiple truly fun and interesting things are happening in LA every day. But when we first got here, we had trouble separating the signal from the noise, or even identifying the signal at all. We really wished that we had like a singular, reliable, cool resource to help us boost those signals, to tell us where to go, what to eat, which parties were worth waiting in line for, someone whose brains we could pick every single day of our new lives in this city. And short of finding that magical friend, that long-suffering friend, we wished, as you do, that there was an app for that. So eventually, once we settled into our lives here, we built one. It's called 5 Every Day, and it's what it sounds like. It tells you 5 interesting things to do in LA every day. It's an extremely simple thing. It is defined by the radical minimalism of what it offers. 5 things, 5 categories, no calendar, no archive, no algorithm, no login. Every single event is chosen by a person, a cool one, subjective, but, and written about by that person. Yeah, it's an app, it's a digital tool, but it is designed to point outwards. It's designed to encourage people to lift their noses from their phones and actually engage with the city around them. Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. It's precisely what we wanted when we first moved here, some kind of quality control filter for experience. And sure, it's not the most obvious thing, a service that offers people less. And I doubt that we would have thought of it if we hadn't been faced with a very specific need for it firsthand. But when we moved to LA, less is what we wanted. And it turns out we weren't alone. Now, 5 Every Day helps a lot of people parse this sometimes unreadable city. But we didn't build it to fill a void in the marketplace. We didn't build it with an audience in mind. We built it for ourselves because we genuinely wished that it existed. And that impulse to make something for yourself first and everyone else in the world later, if ever, it kind of comes naturally to us because we're musicians. We make our living in a very subjective and self-directed pursuit anyway. We're in a band. That's our day job. It's called YACHT. Young Americans Challenging High Technology. Yeah. We built that for ourselves, too, and we don't see much of a difference between writing songs and doing more pragmatic things, like, for example, making apps. At least not in terms of the impulses that motivate us to begin writing and to begin designing. Because although YACHT is a band, that is what we're known for, we see being a public entity as an opportunity, an awesome opportunity to make meaningful and weird on- and off-screen experiences for many different people, at many different scales, and in as many mediums as possible. So yeah, we don't just make music, we make things. We make things that you would traditionally associate with a band, like vinyl records and t-shirts and tote bags, stickers, cassettes, to more esoteric projects that are really only tenuously connected to the enterprise of music, like a neon sign, which we sell as an art object, or a perfume, which we design to extend the reach of our music into the senses. We have a line of sunglasses, we made a laptop case, and yeah, our app. There's no guarantee that our fans will want to buy any of these things, but we make them anyway because as independent creators, we are motivated by the impulse to see our ideas to their realization. It's like making music, which is a process of trying to replicate an imagined sound in the hopes that one day you can make something that you would deign to listen to. We make all this stuff because, first and foremost, we just want to own it. And we find that all the artists that we admire most, our favorite creators of software, hardware, text, design, film, they operate in much the same way. They're not necessarily looking to fill a void in the marketplace or searching to satiate consumer needs. They're beginning their process by putting a tremendous amount of effort into something which has no clear audience other than themselves. David Foster Wallace is my favorite writer, not just for his output, but because of how graciously open he was about his creative process. In an interview in the late 90s, he was asked what kind of impact he thought his work had. He answered, "I want my work to be good. I want to like it. That is the only part that has anything to do with me. I can't make it have an impact on anyone else. I can only make something as good as I can make it." That's pretty simple advice from the man who brought us infinite jest, but ignoring the outside world and working with the stated goal of making something as good as you can make it, that's not easy. It takes tremendous focus and attention to detail because you can't slip anything by yourself, right? You can't phone anything in because you are literally holding the phone. You're on both ends of the line. If you want to be, you're a really tough boss and a tough crowd. You, and only you, truly know what you're capable of, so you know when your output falls short. Of course, this is part of the lore which historically surrounds creative production, right? Artists are often tortured, even at the heights of their success, by their inability to match up to their own aspirations. They're chasing their own ideals and often becoming frustrated because their ideals are changing faster than their capacity to execute them. They are beset by the melancholic disconnect between the pure geometry of inspiration, on the one hand, and the shabby reality of human limitation, on the other. As musicians, we know that feeling. By the time we manage to finish recording a song, making a piece of music, it's usually too late. It's no longer what we like to listen to. We're like snakes eating our own tails, forever consumed with the impossible task of trying to gratify and indulge our own shifting tastes. But rather than feeling tortured by the unreachability of our own aspirations, or worse, betrayed by our inability to execute our own ideas before they expire, we try to reframe the problem as a working method. This is going to sound super simple, and it's a very subtle modification, but we begin rather than end with ourselves as the intended demographic. We start a project, we do it with the intention of making something that totally delights us, and us alone. And we violently disregard, until the last possible minute, the idea that someone else might ever see it, let alone form an opinion of it. Because this might seem a little naive, sure, but working to please yourself is a lot easier and more practical than trying to please the rest of the world. As any working artist will tell you, once what you do is published, no matter how special it is to you, it immediately joins an undifferentiated stream of content. We are long past the point where our planet's capacity to store data has eclipsed our capacity to create it, although that is not for lack of trying. Every few days, we, the human race, not we create about 5 exabytes of data, which is to say the same amount of information as humankind created from the dawn of civilization to about 2003. If you set out to make something in this world with that in mind, with the goal of differentiating yourself from the vast maw of information in the world, of entertaining that hungry void of consumers that have been weaned on that information, you might as well not even bother, because even if you get those people's attention, you're only going to have it for a few moments before something else comes along to bait their clicks and their taps. So don't think about that audience. Don't think about any audience. Think about yourself, because your attention is the only attention you can count on. Case in point. When I was asked to create a TEDx talk on this theme, Think Small, I said yeah, as you do when these kinds of opportunities come along, without thinking about it, frankly. And when it came time to write what I was going to say, I immediately hit a wall. I've given a lot of talks before. I'm a writer. I'm fairly comfortable with the medium. I like conveying big ideas in small chunks of time, but my creative block writing this was pretty insane. I tried to tackle the theme from every possible angle. I filled 4 notebooks with writing about design, entertainment, technology in relation to our creative practice. More times than I am comfortable admitting, I almost picked up the phone, called the organizers, the lovely organizers of this event, and said, "Try me next year. I have nothing." Part of my paralysis, I think, stemmed from the idea of a TED audience. an audience which I know expects a certain kind of talk, delivered in a certain way, with a satisfying balance of personal anecdote, scientific inquiry, and teachable moments that resolve into a neat, inspiring, and world-changingly great conclusion. You laugh because it's true. I was so frustrated because I couldn't see how I could hit those edifying and inspirational notes, notes that people would have expected from this talk. They seemed so inauthentic to my experience, which is as messy and human and totally non-narrative as anything in this crazy world. And so I remained stuck on the prompt for weeks. Think small. Think small. I have big dreams. I don't want to think small. Until at the 11th hour, I realized, conveniently, that I was thinking small. I wasn't trying to please some grand, invisible, untold millions on the web. I wasn't trying to please this TED audience in my mind. I really wanted to make something that I would like, something I would want to watch, something I could be proud of. I was myopically focused on making something for the smallest possible audience, myself, my close collaborator. I should have trusted that instinct from the get-go, because when you make something with the stated intention of being something that you want to use, something that you want to read, watch, or listen to, all of your original idiosyncratic intentions become bound to that thing all the way to the final form. And the end product has voice and personality, which in this world is rare and precious. People who use our app are passionate about it because they can tell that it's not pandering to them. They can sense that it's not designed to pander to anyone, that it was designed to fill a very human, very personal need, a need that they might actually share, but perhaps didn't have the opportunity to articulate before. That's something that you cannot engineer, or fake, or add later. It has to come from the outset, and it has to come from you. Thinking of yourself as your own target demographic, it's not about narcissism. Although, yeah, I mean, that's a slippery slope, so you should check yourself. It's about taking yourself seriously as the first person in the audience and genuinely trying to consider what would keep your attention from wandering. Do this, and sometimes you will discover as you progress that more people are trickling into the room around you and trying to find their seats. And then you keep going, because at that point, it is no longer about you, thankfully. If you're doing something interesting, something which resonates, the theater will fill up around you until you can no longer tell the difference between yourself, audience member number one, and the rest of the crowd, who don't necessarily know when or how or with whom the show started, but who are just happy to be part of something that's bigger than themselves, just like you. And at that point, you're no longer trying to find your place in a new city, with a new piece of music, in a new field. You've made your place, and you get to welcome people to it. So welcome, and thank you.